Good evening. It is. I'll wait till Darcy gets settled. Okay, it's 8:13 p.m. This is the Committee of the Whole meeting. My name is Sharice Hersey. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu. Here. Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Hersey.
Here.
Councilmember Colasetti.
Here.
Councilmember Bishop.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkin.
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Okay, and sorry. Sorry. Approval of minutes of previous meetings. We don't have any. Any additions to the agenda? Additions or changes? Okay, we don't have any. Presentations and public input. Let me see. Carmen, you said yours is going to be kind of long. I just thought I'd ask. Okay, so do we have any presentations from the city? Okay, so public input. Those who wish to address the Committee of the Whole, please come forward and speak. And if we could get your name, that would be nice.
There's no sign-in sheet. My name is Jeffrey Bant, B-A-N-T, and I have a comment or notice, so I'll try to make it pertinent, but it's not specifically about the Lincoln Avenue project.
Could you speak in more to the mic so we can hear you, sweetie?
Sorry.
There you go. Thank you.
Does that better? Okay. My comments tonight may not seem directly related to Lincoln Avenue, but they are an instance of how planning decisions in the Lincoln, Florida, and Imagine Urbana plans encourage actual behaviors that are bad for neighborhoods and residents. I have lived in the State Streets in Urbana since '76 and on the corner of Pennsylvania and Busey Avenue since '88. Pennsylvania Avenue is now the quickest way to get from Lincoln Avenue and Campus to Southeast Urbana, and in turn to go from Southeast Urbana back to Campus or Champaign. Florida is too tight and slow. Now speeding is out of control on Pennsylvania. There's a regular, almost standard speeding of up to 40 or 50 miles per hour, with some going much faster in this 30-mile-per-hour residential zone. I've tracked speed with radar phone apps. This includes buses, delivery trucks, motorcycles. The other day, I clocked a motorcycle doing over 70 miles an hour down Pennsylvania. While driving the speed limit on Pennsylvania, I've been passed by other cars at high speed many times. There's also a very dangerous increase in speeding cars that totally ignore the four-way stop at Pennsylvania and race. The police told me they are aware of this growing trend. Also, over the past few years, Busey has become a major concern as traffic normally heading south or north on Lincoln that finds it less frustrating to cut down Busey, jumping from stop sign to stop sign or gliding through them in a rush to go south to Pennsylvania or north to Illinois or Green, avoiding both Lincoln and Florida. I was hoping that the study projects would address this situation, but I see nothing in the Florida, Lincoln, or Imagine Urbana proposals that address these challenges of changing traffic patterns and increased levels of danger on residential secondary streets. If anything, the traffic engineers are in denial about the seriousness of these already existing problems. In the study, I only see proposed changes that will exacerbate the problems by increasing density along the Lincoln corridor, encouraging or requiring more cars to use Busey rather than Lincoln, and by focusing almost exclusively on non-traffic issues. For a number of years, the most notable traffic problem in West Urbana neighborhoods was the high-speed Jimmy John's delivery vehicles that fly from their exclusive Lincoln Avenue parking spaces to deliver, according to their company slogan, "So fast you'll freak." But now, since COVID, there are many more food delivery vehicles and many more general delivery vehicles, including giant FedEx, UPS, US Mail, and Amazon trucks. But now there is also an increasing number of drivers trying to avoid Lincoln and Florida, and they all act like they are working for Jimmy John's, driving so fast you freak. There is now a danger of loss of life. There is increased fear. There is a degradation of quality of the neighborhood. The increasingly high-speed traffic is qualitatively altering the neighborhood. The neighborhood is under threat. Busey, and especially Pennsylvania, are unsafe for children, bike riders, pedestrians, dog walkers, gardeners, and for other cars because people cutting through this residential neighborhood are driving at ridiculously high speeds. Must we wait for a fatality or major crash to direct our attention to this serious traffic problem? I know that no one seems to have power to change much about these massive and expensive engineering projects or the city's unreasonable and Byzantine strategic plans, which will, if approved, make these problems worse, not better. But perhaps the city administration can deal with this specific speeding issue, which is only one of the secondary effects of these bureaucratic, consultant-based juggernaut studies. We need four-way stop signs on Orchard in Pennsylvania, double yellow lines on Pennsylvania, a radar speed monitor, an end to obstructive parking spaces near Lincoln, and clearly marked crosswalks at all intersections with signs that remind drivers that pedestrians, by law, have the right of way. There was recently a similar dangerous speeding situation in Champaign on Green Street and John Streets between Prospect and Mattis. Cars used these roads at high speeds as a quick way to cross town, avoiding Kirby and Springfield. Residents put up their own signs to try to slow the traffic to no avail. With the installation of 3 stop signs, the high-speed traffic has disappeared. Right now, the potholes on Busey and Pennsylvania are the only things that may in any way slow cars down and encourage them back onto Lincoln and Florida where they belong. Look at that, 5 minutes exactly. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sorry, my report was a lot longer, but it wouldn't fit in 5 minutes, so I'm giving copies to the clerk.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Derek Briles. I'm a resident of Urbana Ward 4, and I'm here again to speak in favor of the ordinance calling for city council oversight for the purchase of surveillance technologies by the Urbana Police Department. We've heard ad nauseum from Chief Boone about his desire to work with the community and to engage with the community. Well, here's a great opportunity, right? The community's here, we're at these city council meetings, we're engaged in this process, and we would like to see these things come through city council and not just get approved in the back room by an administrator somewhere. We know now there's reporting all over the place. You can pick your news source about how ALPR data is being used, right? We know that Texas has queried 83,000 cameras, including Illinois, to identify people that are getting reproductive health care, right? That's not legal in Texas. There is wildly inappropriate use of this surveillance technology that it does not warrant. We don't need that here. Not to mention, I'd like to second Councilmember Evans's comments, right, about the amount of money we're spending and not fixing our homeless problem, the housing problems that we have, the Philo Business District just falling to shambles around us. We can't arrest our way out of this, right? That's not going to fix it. You've had a 71% increase in the police budget since this city council has come into being. How much more do you want, Chief Boone? You've had over $6 million. How much more? You got another $400,000 a couple weeks ago for 3 positions that you probably can't even fill because you can't fill the vacancies that you already have. So you're sequestering money that should be spent on housing, that should be spent on pedestrian infrastructure so that it is safe to walk in our community, but you don't care about that. Like Evan said, right? You're spending millions of dollars, but we're not seeing anything for it. You're leaving the window open and you're swatting flies, but you're not closing the window. You can't just react all of the time, right? 25% poverty is an embarrassment. An absolute embarrassment. 56% of homeless people are African Americans. How much of that percentage of the people living under poverty do you think are black? I would say at least that, if not more, right? We know that it's not just the business district of Philo that's in shambles. It's the housing. Have you not been there? It's an embarrassment, the conditions that these people live in and the rent that they have to pay. The average rent in Urbana is like over $1,200 a month. These people can't afford that. They literally can't. You know what the poverty line is for an individual? It's like under $16,000 a year. That's 90% of your money spent to rent a rat hole on Silver. It's absurd. And you just sit here week after week and watch it get worse and worse and worse and give the cops more and more money to do what with? To do what with? Crime's not that high. Crime's been going down. And they talk about being open. They talk about making data-driven decisions. Where's that data? It's not made available. Is that community engagement? To leave the rest of us in the dark? What are we doing here? What are we doing? So hundreds and hundreds of homeless people, dilapidated buildings burning down. The city is literally falling apart, falling down around our ears. Great. I'm glad that the food hall is back up. I'm glad I can buy sandals from like 4 different businesses on Main Street, but the rest of the city is not good. I live here. I love it here. I'm a proud Urbana resident. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. But I'm also a proud member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. You know what we do? We go door to door. We talk to people, right? And not one of these people have I talked to. First off, do they even know that any of this shit's going on? So you're not engaging with the community. They didn't know a substation was going in. They didn't know these big budget proposals were happening. You're not engaging with them, but we are. We hear these concerns. We're out there every day, and we do it for free. I don't want $400,000 a year to do it. I'm doing it for free. You can do that too. No one's knocking on my door from the city, finding out how things are going in my neighborhood. You should be ashamed. We're doing your work for you, and you're doing nothing but spending money on cops.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to share some public input?
Hello, Council. Good evening. My name is Adani. I'm a resident of Champaign, but enjoy visiting Urbana many times, especially over the summer. We've heard a lot about the number of beds missing in our community, and I'm here to encourage y'all to adopt the Imagine Urbana plan, which encourages more beds per lot, including duplexes, fourplexes. I know y'all have heard this before, but I do want to connect this conversation to what we were talking about earlier, the missing beds. When people are not able to move out of their affordable units, maybe they're ready to go to the next step. We talked about mid-barrier, so kind of like the middle housing folks, who are ready to move on to the next step, but they can't actually get to that next step because if the only options available to them are acquiring a home loan, which we know is not always equitable or easy to access, without that option, they remain in an affordable unit that maybe they're ready to move out of, they're beyond that affordable unit, but they're not actually able to afford an actual whole single-family home. So something like duplexes or fourplexes might be a more approachable option for them. So even though that new construction is not considered affordable housing, that's going to be something that might open up affordable housing for someone else. So at any point when our housing market is so strict and constrained that no one can actually leave their unit, that's not a healthy housing market. So I just wanted to connect the conversation about housing options to homelessness. I know that creating duplexes does not solve homelessness, but I do want to make the connection that because we all live here as a community, and this is a community thing, housing markets are a community issue. When we help build more housing options for people, that helps everybody. So if people are moving around and able to leave their housing option that maybe is affordable, but they're ready to go on to the next thing, that opens something up for someone else. Right now, if you look at our affordable housing, it's not exclusively housing authority units, right? Like sometimes our affordable housing is just old. So if we're not building anything new, we're not letting anything get old. So I really encourage you to build future affordable housing and new housing options for people who are moving moving here, people who are coming here for jobs and maybe don't need a huge lot. Maybe they want a smaller lot, giving people options so that they have what can fit them specifically based on what their needs are. So I really hope you will consider adopting the Imagine Urbana plan. I'm really excited about having increased housing options. And of course, if you build housing along transit lines, people also have the option not to own a car. Then we don't have to worry about all this parking for all these private vehicles. And of course, not everyone drives. So I want y'all to remember that too. All right, thank you so much.
Anyone else would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Alex Martel, and I'm a resident of Urbana Ward 2. I'm here to support the ordinance for establishing approval policy and reporting requirements for police surveillance technology and databases. I support the efforts here for community and local oversight over police technologies and surveillance systems, especially when the implementation of these technologies often creates spaces for racial and religious discrimination, as stated within ordinance. I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and my organization has done work within Urbana to figure out how the people see these types of implementations of police and substations, and we've consistently found that residents want more transparency and community oversight over the Urbana Police Department. I urge you all not only to adopt these changes, but as represented by the people of Urbana, but to consider methods in the future that materially improve the lives of the people living in Urbana. Crime and violence does not happen in a vacuum, and much of it happens due to economic disparities. This is not to condone crime, but to highlight the systemic economic issues that create concerns for safety. Constant increases in the funding of police or provisions for new technologies will not solve the issues that people are facing. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the City Council? Okay.
All right, just checking my mic here. Is this a good distance? I think it is. All right, my name is Anthony Crispin. I am I'm an Urbana citizen, Ward 1, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the comprehensive plan, or Imagine Urbana. I'm just here to support what it says, and y'all should pass it. Because like my colleague over there said, number one issue we got right now, housing. I don't know if you guys know this, it's pretty expensive to live right now. When most of your income is being spent on housing, or at least for the more lower income residents of our community, and just everyone, the housing burden's on everyone at this point, it's time to start looking at these new options. And it's like Councilmember Evans was saying, we're spending a lot of money on homeless and housing services right now, and it seems to not be going anywhere. Now, there's two options for looking at that. We can either say, all right, well, clearly the issue is that we don't have enough money to do it, which does not challenge the assumption of what it is we're doing, which, by the way, I'm in full support of housing and homeless service funding. That's something we need. It has its good and fair place in the community and in the housing ecosystem, but it's not going to be enough, which brings me to the second option of what we can do to address housing issues. And if just pouring money on the issue isn't getting to the end of it, then maybe we need to rethink about how we're approaching housing and homeless services in our community. And the Imagine Urbana plan, with its embrace of new housing types, legalizing different housing choices for, again, supplementing that ecosystem, making sure that everyone that wants to live in Urbana has an affordable place to live, whether that be duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, apartments, etc. This plan opens those options so that we can finally start looking at housing less as how much money can we pour into this and more as how many options and variety can we give to people that want to live in this community. So overall, I just want to say that this plan's been in the oven for a while now, and we've done a lot of community input, we've done a lot of research, we've done a lot of writing. I think it's finally time for us to take a step in the right direction, and if not, solve housing tomorrow, at least put it in writing that we believe in these ideas, we can make these changes, and we can be a community that everyone can afford to live in. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Anna Howe. I live in Ward 2. I'm here to support the comprehensive plan in its current form because I think it's a plan designed for everyone. There's a lot I like about Imagine Urbana, but I'm especially excited to see efforts for a housing study, prioritization of affordable housing, and tenant protection among its little moves. I work in homeless services and I see the need for these efforts every day. I also know how low-income, minority, and single head of household families are negatively impacted by our current housing environment at disproportionate rates. We just desperately need a more equitable rental market. Aligning the zoning code with the comprehensive plan and prioritizing incremental development are two of the big moves that also help us create a more equitable market by increasing housing affordability long term. They also have the benefit of reducing environmental impact and generating more revenue. I'm also excited to see alternate forms of transportation like walking and biking remain a priority. I drive as little as possible, which is a little bit of a privilege. I'm lucky to live where I do in downtown. I'd like to see this option expanded to others, not only because I think cars are expensive and dangerous, but because I think there's a greater sense of community when we design cities around people instead of vehicles. So again, please move forward with Imagine Urbana so we can make Urbana a place for everyone.
Hello, thank you. My name is Joe Hissam. I'm a student here in Champaign, and I often travel across Lincoln Avenue very often, maybe about 3 times a week, visiting friends, going to Jimmy John's, getting my hair cut at Urbana Campus Barber, and I spend a lot of time in and around this space. I'm also an urban planning student, and I have studied it a lot in class and am concentrating in transportation, so it's one of my big focus, and I'm very interested in it. That being said, I fully support every recommendation in the final proposals for the Lincoln Avenue Corridor Study. I am, with slight, difference to the Iowa Street changes. I believe most of it really does promote safety and reduce the speed of cars, because that is one of the #1 reasons why I do not bike on there, why I do not want to walk on there more than I ever have to, and why I look both ways and look behind me, look in front of me, spend extra time to cross that road, because I feel so scared to cross, and I feel like cars do not see me. I feel like they go way too fast for when they, there's no crossing beacons there currently or anything like that. And I think that those need to be implemented at every crosswalk along that street that aren't signalized. And as currently right now, that road is just, I don't know, I always try to avoid it. I never go to Japan House because that road is just so dangerous. Cars drive so fast on it. I just don't feel safe crossing it, don't feel safe being on it. And so I'm really looking forward, and I hope that you guys accept all of those changes. Now with Iowa Street, I remember seeing in the first plan that it was fully closed off, or Iowa Avenue. And now in this new one, it is not, and there's a right out only. And I think that might have been for, EMS services and fire trucks and garbage trucks and things like that. And I would like to bring up the idea that we should challenge the fact, or the perceived fact, that there needs to be access for EMS services with access also given to private vehicles. I believe that there is a way where you do not need to also have access to private vehicles, where instead of having a right-out only lane, you could have maybe an extended sidewalk. There's various places on campus where there's a wide bike lane and combined sidewalk that would be wide enough for a fire truck to go through and to be able to turn into. And I think that's something that should be really looked at with this plan, because as it currently stands, with right-out accesses given, I believe it introduces another aspect of conflict points between pedestrians and vehicles driving on that road. If there is more reasons for people to drive and turn and enter in these various roads, there's also another reason for another car to hit more people and bicycles, especially with the addition of added raised bike lanes. When you add more people are going to bike. If you have also reasons for people to drive out, more people could potentially be hit or struck or fatally killed or injured. I think that it should be looked at to give it a pedestrian and EMS right-of-way only, that it doesn't allow private vehicles on it, but that it's just those two people having access on multiple streets, or only that one. I know that's a really big, busy crossing section, and so I'd like to see the city council and everybody working in the project reviewing that idea and reducing the amount of turning points and conflict points created by vehicles. Also, I think that it should be looked at within the final designs that the crossed or the intersections that have the raised bike paths, raised bike paths should like go through the entire intersection. Whereas on Green Street, if you think there's like a 1-inch, raised bicycle path, but when you come up to different vehicle access points into different streets, it lowers. What happens is that cars don't think about the bike lane being there, and they can still just speed on right through the corner without, really feeling or understanding the vibration in their car of going over a speed bump, reminding them, hey, I need to slow down. This is a realm where vulnerable road user is here. If I hit this person, they could be seriously injured. And so I think that in the final designs, it should be consulted that they should be raised all the way through different points. So those are just some thoughts that I had about it. I fully support it, but I also think that there should be other designs that should be introduced and looked at in the future. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Marina Manetti. I've been in Urbana-Champaign since 1977 when I became a student at the U of I. And I've grown to love this town, and I care for it very deeply. But when I see that funds go more and more to professionals, especially professionals that are involved in the enforcement parameter, instead of the people who are in dire need, it makes me sick. If there's any surveillance that needs to be done around here, it's of those who have power and not the powerless. There's so much abuse of power and so little surveillance of it. And when I hear there's going to be more and more surveillance of people who are just in dire straits and trying to barely survive, the whole thing makes me sick. In town, I keep on hearing sirens and racing cars. It didn't used to be this way, and it's getting worse. And I know I'm riding the bus these days quite a bit. I see how much people are suffering here. And if anything, there should be surveillance in the jail system, on the police system, and the people are just trying to get by. It's very difficult to pay basic needs. So this asking for more and more funding for the professionals who already have a huge wad to their name is just appalling. And so this is a general trend that I wish would start going in another direction.
Any more public input? Are there any letters, emails that need to be read? I know I have 2. And that's it? Okay. Dear Mayor Williams and council members Wu, Evans, Hersey, Colasetti, Bishop, Wilkin, Quisenberry, Lila Leopold, Ward 4, writing to request reading of the following aloud at council meeting tonight during public comment if time permits. Thank you. My name is Lila Leopold, and I live in Urbana in Ward 4. I'm writing at a difficult moment for our country and its experiment of democracy. We need to have a consensus about wanting to keep our community safe and have it prosper, but seem to be on different pages when it comes to taking responsibility for the tools we use to do so and the intended and unintended consequences they have. We are beginning to see in Illinois, not elsewhere, reporting out of reporting of out-of-state women seeking health care hunted by their home states for prosecution through the rest of through the use of license plate readers, and of our immigrant neighbors and citizens alike being snatched from their homes and places of work. The technological apparatuses used to facilitate these injustices by entities beyond local law enforcement in cities and townships is deeply concerning. It stands to reason that instances of government misuse of data from our public systems will continue in unlawful pursuit of us and our neighbors. The question is what we will do about this. As an art historian and artist, I know that cameras and imaging techniques are not neutral. No piece of technology is neutral, and every piece of tech operates in larger systems which govern their use. We need to take great care in how we use technologies at our disposal for how they may have lifelong consequences for Urbana residents and those passing through. This is why I wholeheartedly support continued discussions of the Police Surveillance Technology Oversight Ordinance. I deeply believe such an ordinance in some form is an absolute necessary component of 21st century safety in our communities. I hope council members and our local police leaders can see this ordinance as an urgently needed safety component for working with tools that we neither design nor fully control. Support of this ordinance is in itself not a criticism of police work. This ordinance is merely a necessary component of working with the technology infrastructures of today. This ordinance can also play a crucial role in maintaining open and honest communication with our community. We cannot say with certainty where data from new and existing tools used locally will go, or how this may inadvertently and irreparably harm the safety of any member of our community despite their intended use. Therefore, it seems especially necessary that police and the community as a whole remain in conversation about the latest tools and their uses. This way, we can all remain best informed about how to keep each other safe and how to continue operating as a sanctuary city, which protects the full constitutional rights of its constituents. Please help keep Urbana residents safe and keep thinking about this ordinance. This is a tipping point in our history, and what we do now is of the utmost importance. Thank you for all you do. Sincerely, Lila. I also have a public input from resolution number 2025-07058R, a resolution to endorse the Champaign-Urbana Urban Area Transportation Study, CUATS, Lincoln Avenue Corridor Study, to be read to the City Council. Urbana City Council members and Mayor Williams, we are opposed to the plan to restrict to or from West Iowa Street to Lincoln Avenue. This plan is an example of textbook planning without understanding local conditions and the adverse impacts on the residents of this area. The restrictions visited upon Lincoln Avenue will increase traffic upon north-south streets in a residential neighborhood and will impose safety hazards. We ask that you remove from the list the recommendations you will approve these three proposed changes to current street design. 1, do not approve prohibiting right turns onto Oregon from Lincoln. 2, do not approve prohibiting right turns onto Iowa from Lincoln. 3, do not approve changing Indiana to a one-way street between Lincoln and Busey or prohibit right turns onto Lincoln at Indiana. We do not allow these poor planning. Please do not allow this poor planning to become a reality. Michael Plewa, Elizabeth Wagner Plewa, and that's what I'm going to say. And I think that's it. Is there anyone else before I close it down? All right, public input is over. Do we have staff reports tonight? Okay, no staff reports. New business. All right, our new business, we have resolution number 2025-07-058R, resolution to endorse the Champaign-Urbana Urban Area Transportation Study, CUATS, Lincoln Avenue Corridor Study. And this is coming from Public Works. And we have Carmen, and who else am I talking to here? Is it on? Yeah, I see the green light just close. Okay. Okay. Okey doke. It's all yours.
Line of our presentation, we'll do a brief project overview. I'm going to go through our study recommendations and then details on the public feedback that has been received and next steps for this project. So what is this project all about? First, it's on Lincoln Avenue between Green Street and Florida Avenue. So a very high traffic, high priority corridor in the city of Urbana. The goal of this study is to identify ways to increase transportation safety, mobility, and multimodal connectivity. So this has been led by RPC, our Partners Regional Planning Commission, with partnership with the City of Urbana, University of Illinois, MTD, and of course our engineering consultant, Lockmuller Group. So this project was started, this project is funded by an IDOT statewide planning and research grant. It's a 2-year grant, so it started over 2 years ago. We've extended the project slightly, which we'll get into in a little bit. So a major purpose of this project is safety. So I've just included a few bullet points here. We have a lot of information on safety related to the project on the project website, but a few key things to note is that the intersection at Lincoln and Ohio was identified in 2017 by IDOT as a top 5% priority safety area for our region. And the region, it means our county and 6 neighboring counties around Champaign County. So this is looking at intersections that are similar type of intersections based on the crashes, the number of crashes, and the severity of crashes that occur there. So specifically for our corridor, which is shown on the right from Lincoln, along Lincoln from Florida to Green, we've had 2 fatalities and 6 serious injuries since 2013. And because of the number of crashes and the severity of these crashes, IDOT has also identified large portions of this corridor, which are seen in blue in the image here, as high injury network for vulnerable road users. So that's specifically related to those who are using the corridor that are not protected by an enclosed vehicle. So mobility is another major purpose here for the project. So this is highlighting what's existing condition right now. The level of service is based on the delays for automobile traffic. And what we're seeing here is based on this is the segments along the street. So a few of the segments at the north and south ends of the corridor are rating a level of service E. So what that means is from A to F, they can be rated. You can see the green to the red rating at the top, where an A is free-flowing traffic with little to no delay, and all the way at the bottom, F would be highly congested, excessive delays, and stop-and-go conditions. This is based on our current conditions now, but we do expect traffic to get worse in the coming decades. Same content with text on the left here as the previous slide, but this is just showing the level of service for our intersections along the corridor. And we do have a rating of F for the intersection of Pennsylvania and Lincoln. So with mobility with this project, our goal is not to make this a high-speed corridor. We're not trying to push traffic through faster than they already are, but we do have to take the conditions into consideration, that we don't want to make this a less efficient road for people to travel on. We want to make it as good as it is or better for everyone using the corridor. And finally, mobility is a very important part of this study. So we're not only looking at automobile traffic, but non-automobile traffic, those vulnerable road users, the pedestrians, cyclists, and bus riders. So for pedestrians, you can see the picture on the bottom left. Someone's just trying to cross the street where there is no crosswalk. So we need to improve our crosswalks, and we need to make the sidewalks safer. So along the corridor, there's missing crosswalks, there's crosswalks that can be improved, and there's also sidewalks that have little to no buffer between the road and the sidewalk. For cyclists, we have no infrastructure for cyclists currently. You can see in the two pictures on the right-hand side, there's a bicyclist right on the street and one riding on the sidewalk. And these were taken recently during the summer when the school wasn't in session. So bicyclists are still trying to drive down Lincoln even when there aren't a lot of students in the area. And finally, bus riders, we're taking into consideration where the bus stops are and where people are accessing those, where and how people access those bus stops. Project phases. So like I said earlier, we started this project in 2023 with establishing the scope and the timeline, figuring out what the existing conditions were. We had our first round of public feedback during summer 2023. JD will get into the public feedback sections later, but then we also examined future conditions during that first phase. The second phase, during fall 2023 to spring 2024, we identified potential countermeasures and brought those to the second round of public outreach to get public feedback there. And then finally, phases rounds 3 and 4 for public outreach have occurred in the last year. So since spring 2024 until now, we've determined what our preferred alternative is for the corridor. We presented that to you in November 12th. Let's see, here we are, the same three of us presenting back in the fall to you. What we thought was our final recommendation. But following that presentation, we opened up the third round of public outreach, and we received a lot of public feedback, which we've taken into consideration, and we've altered our plans based on that public feedback, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Then finally, we opened back up for a fourth round of public outreach that ended at the end of May. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk about our recommendations.
Thanks, Carmen. Before I get into these specifics, I just want to give you a little overview on the process that we went through to arrive at these recommendations. As Carmen alluded to earlier, the big reason why we are here studying this corridor is for safety. And looking at all the intersections along the corridor, Ohio has risen to the top of the IDOT critical safety tier lists and was naturally the first place that we started investigating for potential improvements to the corridor. After digging deeper into the safety data at Ohio, we quickly realized that the geometry of Ohio may not be the driver of the crash incidences that are currently experienced on the corridor, but are likely due to the mixed uses of the corridor that are very closely spaced in that area, not only at the intersection of Ohio, but the segments both north and south along the corridor. There are multiple crosswalks at existing intersections. There are bus stops in the area, in addition to full access intersections where vehicles can turn in any direction to or from Lincoln Avenue. So understanding those, we looked at the corridor from a lens of adequately providing more separated spaces for all modes, if possible. We asked, how do we provide safe crossings for pedestrians, longitudinal corridor access for bicycles, and dedicated space for buses and bus stops? So with that, kind of guiding principle in mind, our current recommendations are as follows. We'll step through these grouped based on corridor mode. So we'll talk about pedestrian recommendations and then access recommendations, followed by recommendations specific to transit and bus riders. So we are proposing a few crosswalk changes along the corridor. We're proposing a new crosswalk located close to Oregon Street, the northern intersection of Oregon, with access to the east into the neighborhood. We are also proposing for the Ohio and Indiana crosswalks to be consolidated into a single mid-block crossing. All of these new or consolidated crosswalks along the corridor are recommended to have increased visualization so that drivers can recognize when a pedestrian is trying to cross the street, And we're proposing that this happen via the installation of rapid rectangular flashing beacons. These are flashing lights that are activated by a pedestrian pushing a button, wishing to cross the road. This setup is present on Springfield Avenue on the University of Illinois Quad, close to the engineering campus, if anybody's familiar with that location. And these are proposed at the Oregon Crosswalk, the Iowa Crosswalk, the Ohio and Indiana Consolidated Mid-Block Crossing, and then a crosswalk north of Michigan Avenue. For cyclist recommendations, this plan recommends on-street bicycle lanes for the full length of the corridor. These bike lanes will be vertically separated from the roadway, which is similar to an existing treatment of bike lanes on Green Street on campus, which is just east of this corridor. Automotive recommendations include conversion of the entire corridor into a 3-lane section, which means there will be one through lane in each direction and a center left turn lane. I'd like to point out that most of the corridor is already in this configuration between Nevada and Pennsylvania to the south, but there's a small section at the very southern edge of the corridor from Pennsylvania south to Florida, and then the very most northern portion of the corridor from Greene down to Nevada that is still has additional lanes. It's a 4-lane roadway section with, turn lanes are not provided consistently through theirs. So the proposal is to make it a singular cohesive corridor section through there to be a 3-lane section. To achieve this, we do not anticipate needing a significant portion of right-of-way from existing property owners on either side of the corridor. There is sufficient space within the existing right-of-way and really within the existing curb lines to accomplish this. Many years ago, this roadway was a 4-lane roadway section for the entirety of the corridor that we studied. And a number of years ago, part of it was converted into the existing 3-lane section, but not all of it. So there is additional pavement space that today is really unused. It is hatched kind of off to the side of the road. So as part of the recommendations, none of that hatched space would still be there. All of that pavement space would be repurposed and really given to the bicyclists along the corridor for the addition of bicycle lanes. But we wanted to point out that that is not going to require an additional amount of right-of-way for the entire length of the corridor. There's space there already for that amenity to be added. We will also be thoughtful about how this 3-lane section ends and begins at the termini of the corridor. The road diet will not extend in perpetuity. The study and the project needs to stop somewhere. So at Green Street, if you're heading south on Lincoln to enter the proposed 3-lane corridor section, the proposal is to have one left turn lane, one through lane into our corridor, and then a right turn only lane onto Green Street. And then if you're traveling northbound on Lincoln at Florida, there's room for a single left turn lane and then a shared through right lane, so that all the vehicles will already be in a single lane once you reach the corridor. There will not be any merging required once you get into this corridor section. We're also proposing signal timing adjustments to the existing signals. We're not proposing any additional signals, but the signals that are out there today, the existing signal timings are not coordinated, so they're not really optimized to be green all at the same time, or have one intersection really be aware of what the platoons moving through the rest of the corridor. So signal timing adjustments are recommended for Greene, Illinois, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and the Florida Avenue signals as part of this project. Some additional access recommendations related to automobiles through the corridor. We are proposing a number of restrictions on the West Urbana side streets for automobile traffic. These recommendations were made to provide elevated and more protected corridor experiences for vulnerable road users, namely pedestrians and bicyclists. So under these recommendations, Oregon Street, the northern intersection with access east into the West Urbana neighborhood, is proposed to be a right-out only street. And we propose similar recommendations at Iowa to be right-out only. So under this configuration, no vehicles would be allowed to turn from Lincoln onto either Oregon or Iowa, but a vehicle that was on either Oregon or Iowa would be able to turn right out of the neighborhood to travel north on Lincoln. One of the reasons for only allowing this particular vehicle movement right out only at these locations is to eliminate the potential of vehicles interacting with pedestrians in the crosswalks that are located immediately south of these vehicular access points. Further recommendations include changes to Indiana. The proposed recommendation for Indiana is to have traffic flow in only from Lincoln. So it would be eastbound in only. You could have a northbound right from Lincoln onto Indiana. You could have a southbound left from Lincoln onto Indiana. And then the block between Lincoln and Busey would be converted into a one-way street eastbound. The reason for this configuration is because we are proposing a mid-block crossing. The combined Ohio-Indiana mid-block crossing I spoke of earlier is proposed for the north side of Indiana Avenue, and the location of that was selected to try and align existing pedestrian desire lines and place our crosswalks in those locations. We think it's going to be most effective to align the crosswalks where pedestrians are already crossing, rather than asking folks to change their behaviors and walk another 200 or 300 feet to place a crosswalk where people are not crossing today. These locations for the proposed crosswalks also align really well with the existing pedestrian infrastructure on both the east and west side of the road. They connect with the University of Illinois pedestrian paths and generally line up with existing sidewalks on the west side of the road as well. So because there's a mid-block crossing north of Indiana, any cars turning out of Indiana would potentially not be able to see or recognize if a pedestrian was within that crosswalk, and that creates conflict and potential for a negative crash experience between a vehicle and a pedestrian. I will also add that converting Indiana into a one-way road eastbound only would allow the existing on-street parking to remain in place, and that also will ensure that there are no vehicles that are trapped, so to speak, at the end of the road without an exit to turn around. Additional restrictions for Nevada, the northern intersection of Nevada to the east, not the signalized intersection, and then Vermont would be to convert those intersections into right in, right out only. So you could turn right in off of Lincoln or right out from those side streets onto Lincoln, but no other vehicular access would be allowed. And again, the reason for a lot of these recommendations is really rooted in safety. And the diagrams that you see on your screen depict the potential conflict points or potential for crashes for vehicles to interact with one another at various intersection types that we have along the corridor. At most of the side streets today, a three-leg full access, which is in the upper left-hand box of this quadrant, there are a potential for 9 conflict points, 9 places where vehicles could conflict in their path and interact and result in a crash. By restricting access points and only allowing some movements and restricting others, we're able to greatly reduce these conflict points and therefore should also reduce the crash incidences experienced at these locations. The transit recommendations along the corridor are depicted, one of them is depicted in the image on the right portion of your slide. There is an existing MTD bus stop between Iowa and Ohio. We're not proposing to relocate the stop on the west side of the road. However, we are proposing that in cooperation with the university, pending final agreements and those things, that we would create a more developed bus pull-off. It kind of exists today in an unofficial capacity because there's a little bit of extra pavement in that space, but it was not designed as such. It does not have enough right-of-way to really function per all of the standards. So we are suggesting that, pending agreement with the university, we create that bus stop on the west side of the road into a proper bus pull-off, and the bicycle lane along Lincoln would pull behind that bus pull-off to limit interaction between transit and bicyclists in this area. The northbound bus stop at Iowa, we are proposing to shift north slightly, north of the partially opened Iowa intersection. The reason for this is to provide as much space between the different modes in this area as possible. Shifting this bus stop north will also allow for far side stops and encourage pedestrians to get off the bus and walk behind rather than in front of the bus to access the proposed Iowa Street crossing. Carmen mentioned it earlier, but these recommendations were discussed and vetted with MTD, and they are supportive of these recommendations. And we definitely took their consideration into this proposal. I'd also like to point out that shifting that bus stop north and providing a shelter as there is today would be dependent on property owner agreement to move that bus pad and place it in that new location. The other bus stop change that we are recommending is to slightly shift the northbound Oregon stop north of the Oregon intersection. So very similar to the proposed recommendation for Iowa Street, shift the stop a little bit further north, not have those buses stop in the middle of the proposed crosswalk, and that again would provide a far side stop and encourage any transit riders that were getting off the bus at this location to walk behind the bus and cross behind that vehicle. This slide just details some of the main changes from our presentation in November to what I've just described now. The main change is the vehicle access. Our prior recommendations included full vehicle closures at some of the side streets, including Oregon, Indiana, and Iowa. As you've heard, the new recommendation, based on listening to public feedback, no longer proposes full access closures, but we still are proposing various restrictions as we've described. There also were slight changes to some of the bus stops. The previous recommendation had the northbound Iowa bus stop located closer to where it is today, and that was really, because Iowa Street was going to be fully closed, we did not have to consider vehicle access in relation to where the bus stop was going to be placed. If we are now allowing vehicle access at Iowa, that resulted in pushing that bus stop a little bit further north, again, to try and separate these modes as much as possible. This was a similar recommendation for the Oregon Street bus stop. Now, if Oregon were to be completely closed, the bus stop could generally stay where it is now, but if we are allowing vehicle access, the recommendation is to shift it north to give as much space as possible between the various modes. And I will now turn it over to JD to detail more of the public feedback.
Yeah, so I'll be talking through briefly kind of overall public feedback throughout the entirety of this 2+ year process, and then particularly diving into the public feedback that has taken place since we last spoke to this body last November. Oh, wrong direction. Let's see. So looking at overall public feedback process, like Carmen mentioned in the introduction, we've had 4 different phases of public engagement throughout this process. Phase 1 in fall of 2023 was kind of focused on existing conditions, what people liked, disliked, et cetera, about Lincoln Avenue as it stands today. And we received 345 survey responses and 317 map comments at that point. Phase 2 in spring 2024 was looking at kind of specific recommendations or specific scenarios that we had developed and asking for individualized feedback on each recommendation or scenario type. And we received 192 survey responses and 95 map comments in that phase. And then after we talked to y'all last November, we solicited email feedback on what was then the final recommendations. From that phase, we received 84 emails that were broken down basically into 255 distinct comments within those emails. And then after responding to those emails and revising the recommendations, the last phase took place this past spring, where we again solicited feedback and received 25 emails containing 71 distinct comments. So in total, we had more than 1,000 responses across the 4 phases of outreach. As you can see, we did definitely see progressive drop-off in engagement over the course of the survey. I think there's several things that could be attributed to. I think a lot of times people are excited to jump in just for the likes and dislikes, and then as it gets more specific, the response rate drops off, or people had previously engaged with the study in some capacity and weren't interested in engaging further. So we did see that drop off, but we're consistent, as we can see in the next slide, in working to engage the public. So here you see all of the different outreach methods that we took throughout the different phases. So in the first 2 phases, we had open houses on campus for each phase. For phases 3 and 4, we've presented at city council meeting and accepted comment there, as well as publishing notices in the News Gazette for phases 3 and 4. In every phase, we have engaged with local stakeholders and community groups, including local agencies, neighborhood groups, advocacy groups, university departments, as well as previous survey respondents. During all 4 phases, we've installed yard signs along the public right-of-way along the corridor to increase awareness, as well as distributing flyers to businesses and gathering places near the corridor, posting on social media, and then distributing press releases about the outreach to local media in every phase. And as you can see, we had differing kind of levels of press coverage throughout the 4 phases, but we were able to consistently get coverage in every single phase. So with that, I will jump into the 2 phases that have taken place since we last spoke with this body. So after we presented what at that time were the final recommendations to y'all in November, we had a public comment period open via email for more than a month at the end of 2024. Like I mentioned earlier, we received 84 emails from that feedback, which were broken down into 255 individual comments. And those comments were coded according to their subject matter. So what about the plan that they were responding to, as well as their sentiment. So were they opposed, were they ambivalent, were they supportive, or were they voicing a concern or suggestion about that component of the plan? As you can see in this very dense table, the most common feedback type from this outreach in late 2024 was regarding access closure. So those 3 closed streets that Kate mentioned that were in the proposal at that point. As you can see here, within that subject type, the most common comment by far was opposition to that proposal. And access closure opposition was also the most common detailed comment type out of all the different comment types as well. Following that, you can see pedestrian infrastructure, cycling infrastructure, general corridor recommendations were the next most common themes. And for all of those, support was the most common sentiment type about those changes. And then we can see in the rest of the table other subjects that got fewer comments, but showed similar themes, general support with some concerns expressed. Based on that, it was determined that opposition to the road closures was the primary point that needed to be addressed based on that round of feedback. So whether it was conducting more analysis, figuring out how to answer to concerns, or actually revising the recommendations. In response to this, Lockmuller did some additional analysis to confirm that garbage trucks, delivery trucks, trucks of that size would be able to navigate the proposed closures. So that was a concern that was voiced, that trucks wouldn't be able to navigate the kind of the cul-de-sac design. But it was confirmed that garbage trucks and delivery trucks could navigate it. At the same time, Urbana Fire reached out about fire truck access concerns at these locations. And because of the size of those trucks, that concern was not necessarily addressed by Lockmuller's analysis. And based on that, based on fire department and public, what had been expressed by both of those bodies, Urbana Public Works determined that they were no longer in support of the complete closure design, which led to the updated recommendations that Kate mentioned earlier, with partial restrictions on those 3 streets, but not full blocking off of vehicles at those intersections. So after we had completed the updated design that Kate presented, we again went forward with another round of soliciting feedback via email for more than a month. In this round, we did all of the outreach mentioned before, and also emailed directly, because we had their contact information, emailed directly all 75 or whatever the precise number, everyone who had responded in round 3 got an individual email alerting them, in addition to all of the emails to local agencies and stakeholders. From this, we received 25 total emails containing 71 distinct comments that were coded in a similar manner to the last round. And as you can see here, access limitations, so those same limitations on those 3 blocks, were again the most common sentiment type, which makes sense because that was what had changed since the last round. As you can see here, the most common sentiment type within that was concern, so not outright opposition, but people expressing concerns, followed by support, and then oppositions and suggestions. That subject was followed by pedestrian infrastructure, cycling infrastructure, general recommendations, similar patterns than we saw in the previous round, with some suggestions for tweaks, but also general support expressed for those aspects of the plan. So based on that, we saw that there was still opposition and concern to the updated access limitations, but that was fewer in quantity and less strongly articulated than it had been in the previous round when those blocks were proposed to be fully closed. Some of those concerns included traffic being redirected onto side streets, bike and pedestrian safety, resident inconvenience, and kind of confusion from the restriction types. And then along with those access concerns, like I said, respondents continued to express support for bike and pedestrian improvements, as well as the general study recommendations. And earlier this spring, the Bike and Pedestrian Advocacy Committee voted to support the study recommendations during their meeting. So with that, I will turn it back to Carmen for next steps.
Hi, so the next step tonight, we're asking for council's endorsement of the recommendations. What are the recommendations? I've tried to summarize them here. We talked about the consolidated crosswalks with the pedestrian activated flashing lights, on-street bike lanes for the entire corridor, conversion of a 4-lane road to 3, the access restrictions, right out only at Oregon and Iowa, in only at Indiana, and right in and out only at Vermont and Nevada, and no changes proposed for the other intersections. And then those shifted bus stops, so we talked about as well. Just want to take a step back and revisit the fact that this is all about safety. We have a lot of crash data, a lot of safety information on the website, but I just pulled a couple tables that were available there and try to highlight how our proposed improvements are related to the areas of the corridor that see the highest number and the most severe crashes. So these two tables here are really just numbers. This doesn't tell you about the severity, but that information is online as well. So looking at the top table, these are the crashes at the intersections. So the two highlighted numbers here are two that stand out. Pennsylvania, Florida, and Green Street, of course, see higher numbers of front to rear crashes, but those are the much more highly trafficked roads. With the others, the two highest front to rear crash data points are at Iowa Street and Ohio. So just pointing over to our proposed improvements of where those intersections are. And you can see that this is where we're proposing the bulk of the changes. So we've got our in only at Indiana, we've got right out only at Iowa. Oregon's off the page here, but we've got these updated pedestrian crosswalks here as well. So I also want to point out the front to rear crashes that are being experienced in the segments right in this area too. These two numbers really jump out from all the rest of them, that there's a very high number of front to rear crashes in these two segments between Iowa and Ohio and Indiana. And these are part of the reason why Ohio has been rated as such a high priority safety area, is these numbers of crashes occurring here. But we took a step in all of these considerations that we had to make for proposing these recommendations. We looked at not only the number of crashes occurring there and the severity, but what type of crashes are occurring here. And with the prevalence of these front to rear crashes at intersections where there are no stops, there are no signals along Lincoln, we had to think about why this might be happening. And we think a lot of this is triggered by pedestrians crossing in these areas where there isn't a marked crosswalk, or the marked crosswalk just isn't good enough for what the need is in this area, and that they're not visible to drivers immediately. Drivers might need to stop suddenly, and that causes this front to rear crash occurring. So this is just part of some of the data that we looked at and the reasoning behind these, but I wanted to make this connection between this crash data and some of these things that we're proposing. I also wanted to point out that there have been a number of concerns about the increased traffic occurring west of Lincoln, specifically on Busey. And so we did have rerouted traffic on Busey estimated based on the traffic counts that were proposed. So on the left side are the existing traffic counts. They're kind of small on the page, but they're all there. They're all available online. And then the right-hand side are the estimated changes along Busey. So where the redirected traffic will go, you can see these numbers on the right. So Busey, in its existing state, the count is about 250 to 275 vehicles per day. IDOT says that the planning level capacity for this street is 1,000 vehicles per day, so we're much lower than the capacity of the street. But also, you can just look at the numbers that we've come up with here for how much we really estimate the changes occurring here. So these are at peak hours, AM and PM in parentheses. So you can see these are the estimated changes. So for 250 to 275 vehicles driving along this street, say looking at Iowa Street, you would see 2 more additional turns onto Busey in the morning and 5 in the evening. The same for the rest of these. So I just wanted to highlight that we looked at these numbers, we considered them in making these proposals. And finally, there's been some concern about emergency vehicles not being able to access the neighborhoods to the west of Lincoln Avenue. I wanted to point out that Public Works worked very closely with the deputy fire chiefs. We had a few meetings and a number of emails to go through what we were proposing and to understand their concerns. And so they had 3 primary concerns. First, with the 4 lanes down to 3 conversion, but we think we've addressed their concerns because we'll no longer have medians in the areas where it's going from 4 to 3, so those medians won't be blocking fire trucks from using the street. We also will not have any vertical barriers between the bike lane and the street other than, it's a vertical, it's elevated to protect bikers, but there's no vertical barrier, so there's nothing blocking cars from driving up into the bike lane if they needed to get out of the way of a fire truck. Finally, the full access closures were a concern for getting fire trucks into those areas and out of them because they would not be able to turn around in the cul-de-sacs that were proposed. We've eliminated the full access closures, so that's no longer an issue. And we also took into consideration access of the fire trucks from Station 4 over west of Lincoln. Sorry, I was saying west. This is east of Lincoln, yes. The fire station 4 is west of Lincoln. It's getting to east of Lincoln in West Urbana. So we took into consideration how those fire stations are routed, and the fire department expressed how they would like to access the road. It would be better if it was in at Indiana versus right out only. So the way that we have it proposed is a benefit to how those stations are accessing the neighborhood. I also worked with the police department, contacted them in an earlier phase to address any of their concerns, and we feel that these revised plans address all of the emergency vehicle concerns that we've had so far. So next steps, after asking you for your approval of these recommendations, we're going to continue pursuing grants for the project. If we do not receive any grants, these are the estimated timeframes for what's happening next. So this is a study, so we still have to go through full design. And we'll point out that things could still change in design, and we still can receive public feedback throughout the design phases. After the 2 design phases, which are proposed in FY27 and FY29, we'll move to construction. Currently estimated start time is in FY30. And with that, we'll take any questions or comments. Thank you for listening to all of the details on this project.
Any questions for Carmen, JD, and Kate? Mary Alice.
I will get us started off here. My first thing is I was a little surprised by the analysis of the increase in traffic on Busey. Would you mind pulling that slide up again? Yes. So the way I'm reading this is on the left side of the screen are the current counts of in and out. Is that correct? And so then if the right in, right out, left in, whatever those configurations are, then the estimate is how those people will use Busey. But I guess my main question is, so there's 2 points of traffic there. There's people coming out of the neighborhood onto Lincoln, and there's people coming from Lincoln into the neighborhood, right? And the most traffic is going to be on Lincoln because that's the corridor. So it seems odd to me that we have such low numbers kind of basically trying to get around all these in, out, and in. Am I making any sense? You have a high number of people on Lincoln. They're going to have different routes that they're going to have to take to get to their house, but we have very low numbers here. So I'm trying to reconcile those pieces.
Yeah, certainly. So what is shown on the left half of the screen are, the left half of the screen is mainly showing people that are turning onto these side streets. Let me get my copy up here so I can make sure I can see it. And then the high volume of people that are traveling on Lincoln are the much higher numbers with the through arrows, north-south. And so of the people that are turning onto those side streets, we attempted to guess where they would reroute themselves and show you that visually on the right side of the screen. This is a little bit of predicting human behavior. It's an art, not a science. We are hopeful that people will be encouraged to find their way to more of the collector streets in the area and not necessarily, turn and kind of do a circuitous movement on the local residential streets. Say, for example, if someone lives east on Ohio and they are traveling southbound on Lincoln, perhaps they'll take the opportunity to turn left at one of the existing signalized intersections rather than traveling down Ohio is a bad example. It's staying open. Iowa. Perhaps they will take the opportunity to turn left at one of the signalized intersections rather than coming down to a different location that is closer to where they used to turn. So we're attempting to show you the proposed new configuration on the right half of the screen with these changes implemented.
Right. So I guess let's look at Oregon for a moment, because Oregon's going to be a right out only. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so a right out only. And currently, the existing conditions have 17 people turning right from Oregon to Lincoln. Am I reading that correctly in the morning?
Yes.
Okay, and then 13 people turning from Oregon to Lincoln in the evening.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we get the numbers of, I'm trying to take those numbers and figure out where those people are going to go now.
Yeah, so the 15 people that are turning left.
Right. Where are they going?
So I think what you're asking you're asking about these numbers up here.
No, I'm on the left side.
Yeah.
It says peak hour traffic hours, and then we have the existing conditions where you can turn in or out. Right? And so on Oregon Street, it's estimated that there's 17 people who turn from Oregon right onto Lincoln in the existing conditions. So I'm trying to figure out where, now that's going to stay, right? You can go right out. But the opposite, you can't turn left, right? So there's 15 people in the morning who are turning left from Oregon, driving south on Lincoln. Where are those people on the right side? Where are they driving? What is the prediction? Because the numbers, unless I'm misunderstanding something, the numbers don't add up.
I see what you're saying, and we can.
You're saying they're going to turn on to Busey.
We can make sure that we grabbed the right graphic and follow up with you. But generally speaking, those folks would need to find their way to Lincoln in a different way. So they may choose to travel 1 block north to California. They may choose to travel all the way down to Ohio to make a left at Ohio, or depending on their regional destination, if they turn left from Oregon onto Lincoln and they're just trying to get to Kirby, say, to extend further into the region that's outside the scope of the counts that we took here, outside of our project area, maybe those folks just stay on Busey and they never get out to Lincoln to go down to Florida. Maybe they travel fully south on Busey and then make a right turn on Florida. It's hard to exactly determine what people's individual preferences will be when they reroute.
So a couple of things I've noticed, and I realize that I'm not speaking for all of Urbana or West Urbana here, but since I live on a road that kind of jogs, I live on Nevada Street, right? It kind of dead ends and you can't get to Washington and so forth. Everyone who lives in one of those takes the next closest road, right? So rather than, for example, let's say you want to turn left on Iowa Street and you can't anymore, rather than going down to the light on Pennsylvania and then turning and then going up, they're going to go to the closest road, right? So they're going to go to probably Ohio would be my best guess. They would turn left into Ohio and then go up Busey and then around to Iowa. They would do this big kind of backwards circle. I think that's the most logical way that I can see people driving. So that's why I'm concerned about, I understand where you're coming from in terms of trying to reduce the points of conflict and trying to reduce the points that there could be pedestrian, bike, or car intersections. But I'm also trying to make sure that that we're actually able to solve that problem and not making things worse. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think I can clarify why this is confusing, that these are the rerouted numbers on the right side, not the total number. So I think that's why we're not seeing the numbers match exactly, but the totals are also provided online. Kate, correct me if I got that wrong, but
yeah, we can double
Oh, yes,
we can
please,
double check.
Please
and
do double
provide
check.
you additional information.
So really, the concerns are A, safety, reducing the points of conflict. B, that we have the appropriate infrastructure in place. And C, that we don't make the driving conditions worse, because at the end of the day, we're trying to make pedestrian, bike, and cars, right, safe and it be a good traffic flow. So those are the things that I'm kind of working towards. So just to clarify, because I've been kind of writing my list, I'd like having the overlay in terms of what is the built environment there and so forth, but I am getting a little confused. So Oregon, the proposal is there would be no turning into Oregon. You could only turn out of Oregon. Is that correct? Or is that incorrect?
Make a right turn out is correct.
So you cannot make a right turn in?
No.
And that's because of the crosswalk?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then Nevada, you can only make a right turn out and a right turn in?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And that is because?
That is because of the close spacing with the other intersections in the area. You mentioned Nevada does this weird jog. Oregon also does a similar thing. Yes. And per RPC's access management guidelines, there are suggestions for spacing of intersections.
Okay.
Those four in particular do not meet the minimum standards. So we understand contextually that this neighborhood was built before that policy was put in place. Sometimes it's very hard to retroactively implement best practices. So the right in, right out is an attempt to do as best we can now without completely closing.
I appreciate that. Both because I walk and I drive on that slot. Iowa is only right out at the moment, the proposal.
Correct.
And Ohio, what is the proposal for Ohio, which is the problem child?
No vehicle changes.
No vehicle changes. Okay, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so in the very beginning.
Because that's the problem child, right?
Correct. Ohio's the problem child. So let's look at Ohio, the area. So we looked at the crashes attributed to the intersection, which, as Carmen has on the screen, are 12 crashes. Okay. If you look at these types of crashes, a vast majority of them, 8, are rear-to-rear crashes. If there is something geometrically undesirable about an intersection that is negatively contributing to crashes, typically we see higher angle or turning crashes. So the fact that we have a very high proportional number of rear-end crashes here, to me, says that there are other things at play surrounding the intersection rather than only the vehicles.
And that's why the pedestrian walk is going to get changed.
Correct.
The rear to rear pedestrian walk. Okay, I'm
Correct.
just making notes here.
Yep.
All right. And then the proposal is Indiana's right in, and that's it, and one way. That's the proposal.
Right in. You may also take a left in.
Oh, okay.
And the block between Lincoln and Busey would be one-way eastbound.
Okay.
The thought behind allowing the southbound left in at Indiana was to provide additional access to the neighborhood, frankly, because so many of the other proposals did not allow that movement.
All right. Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thanks for staying with me.
Anyone else have questions? James?
Yeah, one other thing. Thank you for the extended presentation and all the information. I'm a little bit concerned about the public input in the 4th round. It does seem like there's still a high level of concern around the access changes. Not quite as much percentage, but it's still negative. So you haven't made any other changes based on that negative feedback, but you did make changes based on the other feedback. I assume that's because the fire chief came and said this isn't going to work for us, as opposed to what the public told us.
I'll step in here, and I'd say, James, it was definitely the public feedback as well as the fire department's input, this is not the only solution we could have arrived at, for these intersections and the access control. This is, we spent a lot of time chewing on these options and coming up with the different movements, where we think we're providing a good compromise for the concerns, particularly of the neighborhood, while balancing the safety goals we're trying to meet. We recognize that this is, we recognize that this is not going to satisfy everybody's concerns about it. And I don't know if that helps or not.
Okay. To follow up a little bit more then, one of the things is something Mary Alice said during her questions is when we talk about these conflict points, when you make someone take 3 additional turns to get to where they're going, you've added conflict points at each of those additional potential conflict points where they only had 1 before. And so is the theory that that magnification of conflict points is not a concern because the streets that they're driving on are less higher volume, and like Lincoln is, lower speed? Is that why those additional, when you make somebody go down an extra street and turn 3 times to get into their neighborhood, they've gone through 2 additional intersections that they wouldn't have gone through before with the other people that are doing that same kind of thing. So what's the theory of increasing those conflict points? Are they lower risk, or, because that's the trade-off I hear we're talking about.
There are opportunities for people to make the same number of turns just at different locations along the corridor. It may not be the closest spot to where they have done that previously, but there are choices for people to make where they don't have to make a complete circle. Okay. But if they do choose to do that, then there is a substantially lower volume on the local streets than on Lincoln Avenue. So the opportunity for them to interact with another vehicle is substantially lower, even though they are.
And then the last thing that I think is I appreciate this question of, and we're making this change to decrease the issues that we're focusing on. What impact does it have on the other areas? What was said during public comment about Pennsylvania Avenue is completely accurate. I see that every day, 52 weeks a year, just about. And none of the data on here is about Pennsylvania. None of the in and out is about Pennsylvania. And so what does this do to that intersection and to the volume that is already a challenge? What that person said was completely true. People speeding, lots of traffic there. If you sit at the light at Pennsylvania going west at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not as bad as going south on Lincoln, but it's the same kind of conflict. And I don't know, I don't feel like in this presentation we've seen data on the impact of what's happening to Pennsylvania, what's happening to Busey, what's happening to, frankly, Illinois Street and some of the other places that we're making Lincoln more safe by diverting, and what's it doing to the other places?
Want me to respond? Yeah, so the presentation this evening was focused mainly on the changes from the existing condition. As you noted, we did not focus heavily on Pennsylvania. It's an existing signalized intersection. We are proposing to keep it an existing signalized intersection with no changes to the vehicular lanes. So it did not get, a slide or a call out in this presentation. But the study materials and the website did include that as a study location. So we studied the existing traffic that goes through there. We studied the proposed increase in background traffic just from growth in our region. And then we also considered traffic that would be rerouted from these potential closures. And it is, as we've discussed with Mary Alice, hard to pinpoint exactly where folks will go. It is, driver behavior, preferential choice. But the totality of vehicles that we're talking about, no matter which open intersection they choose to travel through, is 20 or 30 cars over the course of an hour. Peak hour in the AM, peak hour in the PM. It will be substantially lower than that for the 22 other hours of the day. These volumes that we work in are only for the highest morning commuter peak hour in the AM, the highest PM peak hour commuter period in the PM. And for Pennsylvania specifically, we saw a lot of really promising improvements for mobility when we implemented the signal timing optimization changes in our software. So that was a really great realization to come out of this study, is that we could drastically improve the experience at that signal with timing changes, and it did not need a lot of hard infrastructure changes. And so, those recommendations are included in the study. We definitely did not leave Pennsylvania off the table. It just did not get a shout out or a call out here because we did not need to do any substantial reconstruction changes, intersection control type changes throughout our study for the proposed condition.
All right, thank you. I guess I did have one more question. Is when this is in place, is there a plan for what happens when the university moves in?
There are a number of things that can be put in.
One day, one week out of the year that's going on, but it's a big week.
There are a number of things that can be implemented with signal timings. There are programs within the controller that they could be manually controlled by law enforcement if that is a part of the move-in plan, or separately, the computer within the controller can have a set move-in plan that runs the 1 week a year that gives preference to whatever movement's
I'm
going
not
to be
just talking
heaviest.
about signals. I'm talking about the fact that there's a dedicated lane for getting into Lincoln Avenue, dedicated lane for getting into PAR. I just want to make sure that that's on people's radar.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yes, we are looking at the removal of the loading zones and making a plan for where loading can happen without having trucks park in the bike lanes here. So we know there's the loading zone outside of Jimmy John's, and we're considering, working with University of Illinois on the parking lot that's nearby for spaces there that could be used for loading. We could also look at Nevada Street where there's existing metered parking spots, to use that for loading, and then on the side streets as well, if there's fraternities or group houses that need space for loading, making some space on those side streets. We don't have definitive areas yet, but that's something that we'll consider in design.
That's good, because whoever designed MCOR didn't have any idea about the gig economy and what that would do to the area right around Green and 6th and so forth. So I'm glad to hear you're thinking about that.
And I'd add too that we had, sorry about the static there, U of I Facility and Services engaged in this study pretty extensively, and so they're very much aware of the ideas and recommendations of this study. And for a lot of this corridor, I think if I'm remembering right, from Oregon or Nevada, is it Nevada south to Pennsylvania, it's going to be the same 3 lanes that's there today. So the main change in the lane configuration is going to happen between Green and Nevada, but not inconsequential to like Illinois Street Residence Hall, but it's not at LAR, PAR, and all that. But the good question. Thank you.
Grace?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation on this. Could you clarify, so tonight this is just to approve the recommendations only, is that correct? Okay. And that this is only the study and there's no money dedicated so far for construction beyond the study, is that correct?
No, we do have this in our CIP right now in these fiscal years that I've noted on this slide. So we have to get through 2 phases of design first. Right now we have them starting in FY27 and FY29, and we're proposing using the state motor fuel tax fund for these. And then we also have money allocated for at least the first portion of construction. Right now we have it broken apart into 2 phases. if we can get funds outside of the state motor fuel tax fund, then we could move this project along faster than we currently have it planned. But for right now, with the existing CIP, this is the plan.
Thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate looking into grant funding and also anything the university wants to pay, since they are some of the main users. Looks like maybe I see everyone smiling up there. You've already broached this, work with them. I'm glad that they're partners on this. I know everyone's in a hard economic state right now, but they're some of the main users. Other question was on the bike lane crossing. Like when it's on some of these, especially the streets that you're reconfiguring for right turnout only on Lincoln, it looks like you're kind of like smoothing that right turn. Is there going to be a clear distinction that like you're crossing the bike lane now? Like clear markings or something on there?
Yes, those are specifics that can be decided upon in the next phase, preliminary design of the plan sets. For now, the pictures and graphics that we have developed are for conceptual purposes only. But yes, there are pavement markings and hatchings and treatments that can be used for that.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, because I feel like you're the experts, but probably people, when it's that curved right lane, you just think like, oh, I don't have to yield. I have the right of way to everything because it's right only, and making sure people know they're crossing the bike lane there. And then also if we would have, I imagine, clear signs, especially where people can no longer turn left off of Lincoln. I could see a lot of people not realizing that before it's too late and they've already started going down a one way or running into a median or something.
Yes, there's standard signage associated with all of those turning configurations that would be implemented as part of the final design on the project.
That would just be like no left turn at this intersection, or like the median arrows being clear? Like how do you let
the geometry
people know
of the
that ahead of
median?
time?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, okay. The geometry of the median would dissuade people from making that movement. It would not seem intuitive in your vehicle. And there are also additional signs that would be placed, such as no left turn, at each of these locations that would indicate it is not to be used as a left turn. No entry signage placed on the right out that is visible only to people on Lincoln, not on the other side, because they are able to be taking that right turn. There are a number of configurations that can be used to communicate that to drivers.
Thank you.
Chandra?
Hi, thanks for all of this. I know it's a lot of work. So the pictures of the bike and the pedestrian crossing way back at the beginning, when was that taken? Was that during the summer or was that during school year time? Because I can imagine it being like a lot more crowded and stuff. Yeah.
These were taken this summer. So yeah, I imagine there are more bicycles and pedestrians crossing and on the sidewalks during the time the school is in session.
Right. So, okay. I just want to make that point that I'm sure that there are a lot more bicycles and pedestrians using that corridor during the school year. And then my other question was about the timing. So if we were to make this resolution to endorse, are people still able to give feedback? Like, are changes still able to be made with your recommendations? Like, would things still be able to change, especially if construction wouldn't even start till possibly FY30?
Yes, we'll continue taking public feedback,
Okay.
and we may make changes to these designs. This is really a concept plan. We're at the conceptual level, and the benefit of doing this is so that we don't move into design phases and start moving forward with construction documents being produced that show things that are really unreasonable to city leadership, to the public. Like, we want to just hash out a lot of these issues now while we're in these really early phases. But yes, things can change during design, and likely will, because we haven't gone through the full design process.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
I'm glad to hear there's more time on the clock here. That's great. Carmen, we talked about this earlier. The two fatalities, are those directly related?
So one of those fatalities, the driver did have a medical condition and hit a pedestrian. information on our project website currently. The other fatality was all drivers, and I'm not sure of any medical or physical, sorry, I shouldn't say medical. It was a physical condition of the driver in the first case. I'm not sure of any other conditions that we're aware of. So, yes, that's a valid point. It could be fatalities are as a result of a number of different things that can happen. And when you have this crash data, you can't always pull out all of that information. We just have to look at what happened on the corridor. We don't always know all the details behind the why it happened. So when it's compared to all other intersections in our region, you know, they're not pulling out data based on medical or physical conditions of drivers or pedestrians either. But yes, you're correct. One of those situations, there was a physical condition of the driver that I think caused them to be impaired.
But
So
you
it wouldn't
understand
be-
the importance. I mean, just because there's a cluster of disaster, you know, the implication is, oh, the road condition or the design of this area is flawed, and we need to make sure we're parsing out causes that are different than just the actual design of the situation. The other thing I want to ask you, BPAC, have they been, where do they plug into this? Oh, okay, there they are. Okay. So they support, at this time, the recommendations.
Yes, the current recommendations, BPAC voted to support them or approve them in May.
Okay. Last question for me. What has been the reaction to their recommendation, which is slowing everybody down to 25 miles an hour everywhere?
Yeah, speed is something that will be discussed and set as part of the preliminary and final design steps, which we are hopeful, the city is hopeful to engage in after the conclusion of this conceptual study phase. I can also give you a little bit of additional crash data. I know you asked specifically about fatalities, but at the intersection of Iowa and Ohio, there have been 3 A injury crashes and 2 B injury crashes, and then the mid-block surrounding those locations. One of the fatalities, the other fatality is between Nevada and Iowa, but around Iowa and Ohio and Indiana, there are 7 additional of those A and B crashes.
Yeah.
And to give you some context to what those definitions mean, fatality is obviously someone loses their life. An A injury crash is incapacitating. They're alive, but their life is forever changed as a result of this crash. A B injury crash is a severe physical injury. Usually they leave the scene of the crash in an ambulance. C injury crash, concussions, minor broken bones, those types of things. And then there are property damage only, where there are no physical injuries to occupants of the vehicle, but obviously, homes or car damage, those types of things. So, fatalities are a big thing to focus on, but we still have a number of crashes occurring that are really negatively impacting people that live afterwards.
Also, I think what's really important that is related very much to design is you're tracking the the type of contact that happens. I think that's really revealing that you have these front to rear and crashes like that. So,
Mary Alice.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, please.
I'm gonna move that we keep in committee resolution number 2025-07058R, resolution to endorse a Champaign-Urbana urban area transportation study, CUATS Lincoln Avenue corridor study.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Chris. Is there any discussion? Jaya.
Yeah, thank you. I would be voting against keeping it in committee. I think that we've had a lot of time with this, and if we're looking at FY30 to even do any construction, I'd like to see this move forward. I think a lot of us have walked or biked or driven or all of those along Lincoln Avenue. It is dangerous. I think there's no question of that. And I think a lot of work has gone into trying to improve it. And we're not anywhere near construction. So I feel comfortable with the information that's been provided here tonight. I appreciate the feedback being taken seriously and the changes that have been made in response to that feedback. But I would like to see this move out of committee.
Can I speak to the motion for a moment?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of give some, first of all, thank you for the amount of time and effort and data that you've put into this and trying to respond to the feedback, not only of the public, but also the different departments within Urbana. You pretty much convinced me on Oregon and Nevada. That makes a lot of logical sense to me. And I live on Nevada, so this directly impacts me. I won't be able to turn out of my neighborhood anymore going south, which is where I go to see my mom. So I won't be able to do that if this passes. I'm a little more tenuous, we'll say, on the Ohio, Iowa, and Indiana, that bucket, because as we talked about, that's the big kahuna. That's the thing that we're trying to solve. And I want to look at some more of the data in terms of where these vehicles are going online. I want to be able to study that a little bit closer based on these recommendations. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I want a little more time to understand that impact. And certainly we're not at a construction phase. We're not even at an engineering designing stage right now because we don't have the money. But I do think that whatever plan that we pass is what the city is going to move forward with when they get the money to do the engineering to do it. So I'd rather have that conversation now. And I feel like if we can take just a little extra time for this portion of Lincoln Corridor, that's what I ask, to make sure that we have it in what we think is the right way. It's not going to hold up any contracts that we're signing. It's not going to hold up any applications, to the best of my knowledge. You can tell me if there's a deadline coming up with an application, like have to have an application for a grant in by the end of August or something. But that's why I'm asking to hold it in committee.
Chandra?
I would be voting against holding it in committee. We've just tonight spent an extensive amount of time talking about this and getting information on this. And I think I myself typically avoid driving down Lincoln because it's so congested, and there's bikes, there's people, there's too much going on. So I would be in favor of doing whatever is necessary to make that a safer corridor for all modes of transportation.
Grace.
Thank you. I was wondering about any particular timeline for approving the study? Like, does our grant that's funding it have any timeline for approval that we're hitting up against?
I believe, and my supervisor can confirm, I believe the IDOT grant goes through the end of the calendar year on RPC's end. I cannot speak of Lockmueller's contract with the city and what the capacity is on that.
But it seems like a couple weeks won't throw off anything major with our grant timeline or anything. Okay. And then also I was wondering about logistically, council, maybe clerk, if there were to be a majority no vote for keeping it in Cal, is this dead, or do we vote again to move it to council? I guess I just don't understand what a no vote on keeping it in Cal means.
So a no vote on keeping it in Cal would just mean that a new motion would have to be made to take action on the item, because you're not, you're just voting on whether or not you want to keep it in committee of the whole. You're not voting on approval because it's not final action. We're at committee of the whole. So another motion would need to be made to approve, presumably, or not approve. I mean, you can motion whatever, but yeah, a new motion would need to be made.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any more discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti?
No.
Councilmember Bishop?
No.
Councilmember Wilkin?
No.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Moving on to the next resolution. Thank you, you guys, for your information and for the for the presentation. Next resolution, resolution number 2025-07-059R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a highway authority agreement for 901 West University Avenue between the University of Illinois Foundation and the City of Urbana. Hello, Mr. Zeman.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mayor. It's good to see you all. Okay. So let me move my files around. Okay. Stark contrast to the last one. This is
gonna be quick.
That's my goal, but don't want to,
Just thought I'd ask.
I mean, hey, it's your guys' show. The short story is that this is a property at 901 West University Avenue. There's Einstein Brothers Bagels and other commercial use for that property, southwest corner of Lincoln and University. The University of Illinois Foundation is looking to purchase this property back. They owned it years ago, and now they're purchasing it back. And as part of the property purchase, they are looking to, sorry about that, I put this on the screen now, I got to get a more reasonable image. They're looking to get through some EPA processes to get a no further remediation action from the EPA, because this site years ago used to have an underground storage tank for gasoline that has since been removed, but there's still contaminants in the soil. And so they're going through the steps to deal with this contamination in an approved way. Now, part of the contamination is also under the adjacent highway right-of-way or street right-of-way. And this diagram here shows that the blue part is Urbana right-of-way. The green part is IDOT right-of-way. And so what U of I Foundation is doing is entering into agreements with both of the highway authorities. And these agreements basically spell out the, rights and responsibilities of each party. There's some obligation that the U of I Foundation would get into if, we have to do some soil remediation because we know that it came from the tank that is associated with this property. I'm reviewing their data. I can tell you this is pretty common gasoline, derivative chemicals in the soil. It's a, unfortunately, relatively common situation in an urban environment. This is not some unusual kind of contamination that it's pretty much contained until you have to go dig out and put sewer pipes or utility work in the area. So it's not a great hazard to public health as it stands right here. And so, with that, U of I Foundation used some standard EPA Highway Authority agreement. The city has a process within our ordinance, within our city code for right-of-way, kind of a supplemental agreement that spells out a few more things than what the EPA standard does, and they're using our form for that. So that's why I recommend that council give the mayor authorization to approve this agreement with U of I Foundation for their, basically their real estate transaction here. And happy to answer any questions council may have.
I'd like to ask a question before I get you guys to do it. Can I do that? Okay, I'm pretty sure there used to be a Clark station or something on the corner. My question is, how do we get a bakery on top of benzene?
Well, one way to deal with this kind of contamination is to cap it, essentially, with, you cap it with pavement and, a building, depending on the type of, contamination or vapors that may, result from that. It may all just take putting a vapor barrier down under the building. Like, these are ways of containing the contamination. EPA doesn't require people to get all of the dirty stuff out of the soil before they build on top of it. If that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, it makes sense because it is. Grayson, I thought you had a question. Did you have your hand up? Oh, I'm just asking, I thought I saw you with your hand up when I was asking, so that's why I was, no. Okay. Anyone else have questions?
I do have a question.
Oh, okay, there you go. I knew.
Yeah, I usually do. I'm trying to understand what's the issue here. They need our authorization for the Illinois Foundation to enter this agreement with the Highway Authority to mitigate this contamination? I'm not understanding what this arrangement is.
So in this agreement, we are the Highway Authority. City of Urbana is because of these this red dot on TP named TP22 that is within City of Urbana's right of way, where we are entering into an agreement with U of I Foundation using standard language developed by the EPA and by the City of Urbana. That basically just, we are able to ask U of I Foundation for participation in cleanup of this contamination. We're recognizing that it's there, we're aware that it's there, and we're signing into agreement. And what this does, this agreement itself is part of what it's called an institutional control by the EPA, where they're saying that the U of I Foundation, as the property owner, they are taking institutional steps to contain this contamination. And part of it is working with the adjacent highway authorities to recognize that it's there and to have procedures in place for when excavation work needs to be done in the area. Does that kind of make sense?
I think more so thank you. Are we committing any money or effort into this cleanup with this agreement?
There is, if I'm remembering correctly, if we do follow the procedure of giving the property owner enough forewarning about the upcoming work, then no, like they would be participating in the cost. If we do the work and then we're like, oh yeah, do you remember we had this agreement? And then we go tell them about it after the fact, then their participation is capped at a dollar amount, like $10,000 or something pretty small like that. But no, that's generally speaking, this is a pretty good arrangement from the city's perspective, in my opinion.
They will be taking on most of the mitigation work.
Yeah, because
as a property owner.
I'd say generally what's more commonly the case, we go to do, excavation within a right of way and then within the city, and there's contamination in the soil. We don't know who it came from, and it's just ours to deal with. And here we have a situation where it's like we can tie it to a property and we can say, okay, this property owner is going to participate with us. So usually we don't usually have that knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary Alice?
I just want to be sure that I'm understanding what you're saying about the financial obligation. Because we are disclosing it in this agreement, that limits the amount that we're going to have to pay to remediate the issue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions? Chris?
Thank you, Chris. Always good to clean up. Always good to get rid of contamination. But it's been there a while. Why all of a sudden now?
I understand this issue has some age to it. I want to say that the U of I Foundation had this property back in like 2008-ish, sold it to somebody who developed the site, and the no further remediation, wasn't brought into effect where the U of I wanted to buy it back, something to that effect. So if I'm understanding it correctly, is that for the U of I Foundation to purchase it back, they have a pretty high standard they want to meet, and they want that no further remediation a standard met, according to the EPA.
You don't know why they want to buy it back, though?
Oh, no, I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
Any more questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Mary Alice?
I will move resolution number 2025-07059R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a Highway Authority agreement for 901 West University Avenue between the University of Illinois Foundation and the City of Urbana onto City Council's consent agenda.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Okay, Mary Alice moved, JS seconded for consent agenda. Any discussion? Clerk, will you please call the roll? Huh? Okay, new voice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on.
Chair?
Yes?
May I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, we have quite an extensive agenda here, and it is 10:17. Talking with the clerk, she suggested that we address anything that was very time-sensitive, and then have potentially, I mean, the other two options are to move the rest of the agenda onto the next committee of the whole, or to reconvene tomorrow. And I don't know what the will of the committee is. So I just wanted to pose those two things, given the time.
Do we have anything that is extremely time-sensitive on the agenda? Darcy? Is there anything that like has to be done tonight and moved on to for council?
So I actually want to pose that to staff because I do see that two of the items are grants that we are providing. And I don't know if, and maybe Elizabeth can help speak to this too, I don't know if any of these are time sensitive or have deadlines.
I think, and Braden can help me with this if I'm wrong, but I think the DREAM grant is probably time sensitive because I think they're already running this program and they want to be able to receive funding.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, let's.
The Historic Preservation Grant is a grant to us. That's not time sensitive, I guess. We can, if we accept it in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, it'll be fine. I would ask Kevin about whether the hostile ordinance is time sensitive, and while Kevin's responding, I'll check with Vince.
Yeah, I mean, it's time sensitive in that if it's approved, then the applicant plans to purchase the property and start working on it. So I think from their perspective, it's probably time sensitive, and I would concur.
I would also say that the library's eager to have the transfer of property completed, so I don't think that should take much time, but.
Okay, can I make a motion that we finish new business maybe and pick up old business tomorrow? Can I, well, not make a motion, but can I suggest that we, because we could do new business tonight.
Chair, would it be possible to keep old business in committee for the next meeting rather than
I'm cool with that
continuing
too.
to tomorrow?
I'm cool with the old business staying old. Okay.
So we do.
I'm tired.
We do still need a motion to extend the meeting to 11 or 11:30 because it is 10:20. So, or we need to.
Can we just, can I ask for an extension and somebody just tell me what they want to, I'm thinking 10:45 at the latest, but James?
Yeah, I'll make a motion actually to extend the meeting to 11 o'clock, a 30-minute extension, but if we get done before that.
30 minutes past 10:30 or 30 minutes from now?
That, the rules say 30-minute extensions after 10:30, so.
Okay.
I'm moving the first extension.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moving on with number 3, right? We are on number 3, ordinance number 2025-07. Oh, one more thing. Do I need to make a motion about the old business thing?
We can just do that when we get to them because we're working our way through the agenda anyways, and that's quick. We know it's coming.
Okay.
Quick.
All right. 2025-07-022, an ordinance approving and authorizing an amendment to the second cooperative agreement, Urbana Free Library expansion to facilitate the transfer of properties. And we have Vince. Hello. Hello. Okay. Yeah, there we go.
So what we're asking tonight is approval of an ordinance that would authorize an amendment to the second cooperative agreement with the Urbana Free Library that would allow us to facilitate the transfer of properties from the city to the Free Library. A bit of history. The original cooperative agreement was approved by City Council in 2004 between the city, the library, and the Library Foundation. And I apologize for the colors here. We talked about this earlier, but I'll point out here that the properties in question are the 212 West Green property, commonly known as the Morrow Building, and the Tepper Building and Tepper lot parcels here. So the second cooperative agreement called for the 212 West Building to be owned, operated, and maintained by the city as a rental facility until such time that the library board determined that they wanted to take possession. So since 2022, when the previous tenants did not renew their lease, we've went ahead and allowed them to utilize this property for storage and parking under the premise that we would be moving forward with these conversations today. The original intent of the agreement in 2004 was to transfer ownership of the Tepper Building and parcel to the library, but no formal action was actually taken on that up until now as well. So given that the library has a vested interest in acquiring these properties for future expansion and current use today, that's storage at the 212 West Green Building and the current use of storage at the Tepper Building. The city was leasing the small portion of the Tepper lot to Busey Bank. That lease ended June 30th, so those rental spaces are now available for their customer and contractor parking. So the amendment to the original agreement actually removes the 2-year written notice portion that's in the agreement and would allow us with agreement to this amendment to facilitate setting a closing date and pursuing the transfer of title to the Free Library. So I'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Vince? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll move on to the consent agenda, ordinance number 2025-07022, an ordinance approving and authorizing an amendment to the second cooperative agreement for the Urbana Free Library expansion to facilitate the transfer of properties.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Chris. Any questions? Any questions of Vince? Any questions? Anything? All in favor? Nope, I got to do a...
You can do voice.
Okay, all right. So if there aren't any questions or anything else, I'd like to move. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that's going to go on the consent agenda. All right, next is, moving on, ordinance number 2025-07-023, an ordinance approving a special permit 1204 South Lincoln Avenue, plan case number 2508 SU-25 Hostel. And this is Kevin Garcia.
Hey, good evening. Okay, so this is a request by Halton Bagley to allow a hostel at 1204 South Lincoln Avenue. Hostels are somewhat similar to hotels, but they're typically more budget friendly. They cater to a younger clientele, and they have shared sleeping and bathroom facilities. The building at 1204 South Lincoln Avenue is the former Kappa Delta sorority house. Kappa Delta owned it for over 90 years. They sold the building in 2017. It's been vacant since 2021. It was purchased last year by Jim Webster. Now the applicant, if the special use permit is granted, the applicant will purchase the property and they will live in it and run it as an owner-operator of the hostel. So the location here is along our favorite avenue, Lincoln Avenue, on the corner of Indiana Avenue, right across from the McKinley Health Center and the rest of the U of I campus. Sorry. So the uses in this area, it says residential group for this building. It's been vacant, like I said. But the Twin City Bible Church is to the south and to the east. And then you've got the West Urbana neighborhood further to the east. You've got some apartments and some Greek houses to the north as well. Zoning, this lot is zoned R7, as all of our old sorority and fraternity houses are zoned. The surrounding area, there's a lot of other R7, there's a lot of R2, single and two family residential, and to the west is zoning for the university. Okay. Future land use is identified as university residential, which this proposal aligns really well with. I'll just cut to that part. Okay, just here's a good oblique shot while I talk about the use itself. So the proposed hostel would have a maximum capacity of around 60 guests. That's less than the current maximum occupancy of 67 that's allowed for its use as a sorority or fraternity. The layout of the building would be essentially unchanged. There'd be no real changes made to the exterior except to bring it up to code. It would have 10 private rooms, 10 to 11 shared rooms, 6 full private bathrooms, and 2 community bathrooms. As I said, the applicant would live in and operate the hostel. They'd put policies in place, including quiet hours beginning at 10 p.m., no alcohol on site, and a minimum age of 18 to check in. There are 11 parking spaces on the site, and if additional parking is needed, the applicant has several options available, including guest permits to park on street, parking in the U of I lots. There's one kind of off the screen here to the south, or no, to the west, and there's another one up by Jimmy John's. He's already been in contact with the U of I about using those. There's also some private lots that probably have some excess space that he could lease from as well, if needed, again. So this building is already sprinklered, which is a plus, but a hostel would be considered a new use. So the city building official would require a full code analysis and new inspections of the building prior to occupancy. Of course, new inspections after they did anything required to bring it up to code. For the sake of time, I won't go through all the special use permit criteria in detail, but I will say this proposal aligns very well with the comprehensive plan and is, as Lou Hopkins stated in his last meeting as a plan commissioner, he retired from the commission after 23 years. Thank you for your service, Lou. Lou said this is a near perfect example of the type of reuse that we envisioned back in 2022 when council approved changes to the R7 zoning district. And again, to refresh your memory, that was to allow reuse of these architectural gems, these old Greek houses, to allow them to be reused if people essentially didn't mess with the exterior of them. So the Plan Commission recommended approval with one condition, which is reflected in the ordinance. But that, yeah, oops, I guess here's some pictures going through fast. Okay, Lincoln Avenue, that's the back. Okay. Okay, so the recommendation is to approve the ordinance, which, as I said, includes that the condition that Plan Commission added, which was that they would have staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can take any questions if you have them.
Anybody have questions for Kevin? Yes, Mary Alice.
I'll try and be really quick. Okay, so I know that the Plan Commission only put one stipulation on there, and I don't know if people had a chance to read the notes, but basically that stipulation goes with the permit. The other items that the person who potentially will purchase it, quiet hours, no alcohol, that stuff is not in the special use permit, so they theoretically could change their mind is what I'm putting out
They
there.
could, yeah.
They could change their mind, or they could have a different owner.
Right, yeah, and Plan Commission didn't want to impose sort of operational type rules that they didn't think would be necessary, mainly because this used to be a sorority, and as a sorority you can, have alcohol, have wild parties, things like that.
So my only thing that I would like to ask of this, it's late. The only thing I would like to ask for is that this property not be eligible for guest permits on the street parking. So they have, I believe, 10 to 11 parking spaces. They're in conversation with U of I to be able to bag. So if they have people that need space, they have a means to do it. The day parking, I don't know if people have seen them before, but the day parking passes basically get a book of orange. You write down the address and you put it in your window. So how many you get, you can just put out. So I think it would just be cleaner if we said not eligible for that guest street parking.
So, yeah, Plan Commission, if I don't know if you were asking a question, but I was going to just respond. Plan Commission did kind of discuss, well, they discussed parking. Parking was kind of a big thing they discussed. They didn't really know whether, there's no real precedent for setting a cap on number of on-street permits, so they chose not to set a cap on guest permits. I will say the last time I looked at permits for this house, it was back in 2017. There were 14 permits that, when it was a sorority house, they had that many parking permits to park on street, which seems kind of like a lot. But Plan Commission did not want to impose sort of some arbitrary cap and wanted to leave it up to, let me see what I'll quote Lou Hopkins, at least in draft form. Let's see. He believes that the city should invite innovation and collaboration instead of adding rules that they would not know how they would work or what they should be. And that's talking about sort of setting a cap for on-street parking. I mean, the applicant has options, so yeah, he can get. I know to bag meters is quite a bit more expensive, especially because this is sort of a low-cost option for folks, for guests to stay in by the university. I think he said it was $20 a day to bag 1 meter. So if you're paying $35 to stay here, that seems like kind of a high price.
That also might discourage people from driving.
Yeah, and it could. He did also say he was going to be egalitarian about it. He said whatever the parking sort of costs, he would sort of average it out. So if he had 11 people staying there and then he had to bag 2 meters, he would, take that $40, divide it by the 13 people staying there for the night, and then charge everybody that price. So, I mean, I would just suggest if you're going to set some sort of cap, maybe allow some on-street parking, because, if this were to continue again as a sorority, they could have essentially unlimited resident permits. Sure. This one at 14 wasn't terribly high. The neighbor house in 2017 had 33. And then 2 other ones on that block just to the north had over 10 each. So,
I mean, I can be persuaded to allow some, but I do want to cap. Ideally, I would like none, just because of the structure and how it's set up. I'm also trying to keep track of time so we can get this done.
Yeah.
But and that's a question to council, whether or not they'd be supportive of either a cap or a restriction of not using guest passes.
Chandra.
I from what I know of hostels, most people don't drive, and I think a hostel in that area would support that idea, especially like if I'm just thinking of like friends of college students coming to visit for a weekend and they stay in the hostel. They're not going to drive. They may take the Amtrak down or whatever the case is. So I don't know if that's necessary to have a cap or some sort of limitation on the parking.
Grace?
I think that if we are going to explore any of those parking things, that we need to have another conversation outside of tonight on it. Like, I don't really understand what day meter, bag meter stuff you're talking about in general, or the precedent there. So I think if we were going to make any changes, we need to have more than just this short conversation tonight on it.
I mean, I'd be willing to of course, talk to the applicant, so, you know, between now and council, whenever council is going to be, to, you know, to get his thoughts on what that cap might be. I will say we would require, and again, with the caveat that our parking requirements are not scientifically based at all, they're rather arbitrary as is, but our parking requirements would require 20 to 21 spaces if this were a hotel, which again is sort of like a higher end thing, which is more likely to have, you know, I guess more well-off people bringing their own cars. So, you know, if this were an actual hotel, they would need to, you know, to provide 20 or 21 spaces, which is 10 more than they have on site, just to sort of give you a frame of reference. But again, this is a hostel, so we'd expect fewer people to be taking cars there.
James?
Because it's a hostel, I'm not really supportive of a cap.
Can I say, Mary Alice, take the chair?
Yep, I'll take the chair. Chair recognizes Sharice.
This is my experience with hostels, of course, is zero. But I've had friends that have stayed at hostels, and something that Chandra said about, you know, folks coming and visiting a friend, they probably take the Amtrak or the bus or something like that, but it's close to campus. I also envision parents coming and bringing and to visit the campus. I've had a couple of friends that have done that, where they, you know, they come with their kid, and this is one of the schools that they've been accepted to, and they want to come and visit the campus, and they want to do that. You've got a 10 o'clock quiet time. I mean, you know, I don't think there'll be a whole lot of driving anyway, because you're going to be in bed sleep. And I don't think that there's going to be a lot of, it's kind of like what you said, Kevin. I actually agree with you that it being a sorority house previously, and sororities generally, especially here at U of I, because it was always the white sororities that had houses for the most part, which means they had money. And so they had cars. And I don't know that with it being a hostel, that it's going to be a real problem with traffic. Mm-hmm. But that's just my opinion. And
I'll give the chair back to
Take the chair back now. Chris.
So Mary Alice, would a compromise be, and Kevin, answer me this, if there becomes a parking problem, there's cars up and down the road, there's, you know, problems, can we revisit this and do some things?
So I'd say technically no, but we could, you know, we could talk to the operator and say, hey, it seems like there's a lot of, you know, excess. You're giving out too many guest permits for parking on site. He seemed like a reasonable guy, but yeah, I don't think there's any technical thing we could do. And trying to write in a condition like that would probably be not terribly enforceable.
Anybody else with comments or anything? Chandra.
I'll make a motion here.
Okie dokie, I'm listening.
I'll move approval of ordinance number 2025-07-023, an ordinance approving a special use permit at 1204 South Lincoln Avenue, plan case number 2508-SU-S-25, a hostel, onto City Council for approval on the consent agenda.
On the consent agenda, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Jaya, Chandra moved, Jaya seconded. Any more? Okay, Mary Alice?
All right, so just real quick, I think this is a great reuse of the property. I do have concerns about parking. I understand that hostels generally are a younger crowd, that they don't have, they're not very wealthy. That's why they're staying in a hostel, or they have other choices. I do think that it would be great if Kevin could talk with the applicant about parking and about the on-street parking. But because I'm probably the only person who's going to vote no on this, I'm going to vote no on this. It's purely because of the parking issue. But in general of the project, I'm in support of that.
Point of order.
James.
If one of the council members votes no to put it on consent, doesn't that mean it does not go on consent?
No, it's majority.
The
Because it's a motion to approve to the consent agenda. Like,
But
it's not
the
just.
consent agenda is supposed to demonstrate unanimous support for it moving forward. And there's
Correct,
not.
which is why when we're at council at the consent agenda, only one member is required to remove an item from it, but it is simple majority to move an item forward to council.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Are you requesting a roll call vote?
Okay, we can do whatever.
It's whatever your
I
preference
want a
is.
roll
You call the
because-
shots.
Because of the folks, you know. with
Sure.
their-
Councilmember Wu?
No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti?
Yes.
Councilmember Bishop?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Okay, and that passes. Moving on to the next thing, resolution number 2025-07-060. Thank you, Kevin. R, a resolution authorizing acceptance of a IDNR certified local government grant, historic preservation website agreement number CLG 25007.
Okay, this is a resolution to accept a grant that we have received to take a large amount of our historic preservation information and put it on a website that's similar to what we did for Examine Urbana. Any
Okay.
questions?
Okay, Grace.
What's this Royer District? You're talking about Royer District educational material?
Oh, that's kind of Roy. That is a district that just has a bunch of it's a bunch of buildings designed by Joseph Royer, and we have some pamphlets that we had printed out. I think back in 2009 or so. I think that says in the future. We might have that. We might have updated Royer District materials as well.
And the city's has a match on this of almost $4,000, is that right?
It's mostly in kind.
Oh, I see. In kind through University of Illinois staff hours. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So no financial direct contribution here.
Correct.
Cool. Thank you.
And Chris.
Do we have somebody lined up to design the website?
We already have her working for us. We're paying her right now out of planning division intern funds, and then I think we've got to do some budget amendment or budget something or other budget wise to.
Oh, we got somebody on.
Yeah, we do, and she's great. Her name's Adeline Evans. She's just hit the ground running, been fantastic.
Great.
Any more questions?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mary Alice.
I will move resolution number 2025-07060R, resolution authorizing acceptance of an IDNR certified local government grant for historic preservation website, which is agreement number CLG 25007, onto the consent agenda.
Okay, any a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jaya. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Next, we have item number 6, resolution number 2025-07-061R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a subrecipient agreement, community services grant agreement, DREAM, DREAAM, Believers Program. And Braden, thank you. Hello, you're here again.
Hello, everyone. And I just have one community services grant agreement for you tonight, not 13, so that should make it easier. So this is a resolution to approve a community services grant agreement with DREAM to support their Dream Believers program. This agreement will provide $45,000 in city general fund to support this program, and this will be part of our community services grant program. So a little bit about the Dream Believers program. It's a collaborative pilot program that targets boys entering 6th grade in the Urbana School District. And this is a collaborative program to provide enrichment programming during out-of-school time, academic STEM and cultural enrichment, sports, homework help, and also mental health services. DREAM will be partnering closely, has been partnering closely with the Urbana Police Department, and this program will also collaborate with the Urbana Parks District, CU Church, Trinity Lutheran Church, and HOIS, which is an organization, the acronym stands for Helping Our Youth Change Every Day. So as you might recall, when we passed the other community service grant agreements, there was a little bit of a balance left over. We had a certain amount set aside for community services grant agreements, and then there was a little bit of a balance. And so in deciding how to utilize that balance, this program came to our attention. Again, they had been working with the police department, and council wanted to support the program and to provide funding for this program. And so since we had a little bit of that community services grant funding left over, we decided to enter into an agreement with DREAM. They do a lot of great work in our community. And so this agreement will be the same as all of our other community service grant agreements, starting fiscal year July 1 of 25 and going through June 30th of 26. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer those now.
Are there any questions for Grace?
Thank you. Are there any budgeted money or resources within the police department for their participation in this program?
I can't answer that.
About a year ago, we started receiving opportunities to apply for grants regarding our youth. Once it became known that was our direction, we recently have received said funds. Having said that, we were not in a position to utilize the funds in time for this program. So at some point, I plan on coming before you all to speak about some of the grant money opportunities that we currently have.
Okay, Elizabeth.
I want to clarify, and the chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think much of the participation of the police department in this program will be staff time, right? So I think there will be some activities that they will be involved in, but that would be time that's already budgeted.
Anyone else?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to, just put something out just for everyone in the public in regards to this program in particular. With DREAM as the organization that we're focused on, there's a picture on social media of me at Jetty Roads Day with a group of young black kids that are a part of the DREAM program. The kid that's standing right next to me with my arm around him, he's the kid that lost his life today. So as we are discussing these things, and I want to ensure that we don't allow politics to get in the way, all right? Again, go look at the page. Kid standing right next to me is the kid that lost his life, all right? So when I say that I have a, full understanding of the impact that these organizations have, this one in particular, I'm not talking about anyone else, but this one in particular, that's what and why I am presenting this. Understand, we wanting to understand where funding can come from and things. I'm not arguing any of that, but I just want us to remain focused on the why. That's it.
Anyone else? Could you take the chair real quick?
I will take the chair.
I'm going to add too, because I was at Jetty Roads. The table right next to ours were the DREAM kids, and those kids were the most mannerable and most helpful. Mm-hmm. They helped me and Bridget break stuff down. They didn't wait for us to ask. These are kids that are invested in themselves. They have invested themselves. They have put in some sweat equity to this. It's not just about the funding. But that funding has actually, I think, helped them set goals for themselves. I think it helps them, give them a different perspective of what's out there. And I just want to say, and after talking with Tracy Dace and He runs the program, Tracy Dace, right? And he, and it was just really, I think this would be serve these boys very well. And it wasn't just boys, there were a couple of girls that I came across too.
Would you like the chair back?
Yep, give me the chair back.
All right, it's all yours.
All right,
Point of
so.
order, are we on questions or discussion?
We're in questions
Okay.
because there is no motion on the floor,
you.
so we can't have a discussion
Make
yet.
a
Who
motion.
wants to make the motion?
I can make it.
Go ahead, Mary
Chandra
Alice.
wants to make it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chandra.
Whoever.
I move approval of resolution number 2025-07-061R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a subrecipient agreement, community services grant agreement, Dream Believers Program, onto City Council for approval on the consent agenda.
Second.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna give it to James because you had a few. All right, it's been moved and seconded, and Jaya.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't here for the straw poll, so I just want to make a few comments. Dream does incredible work, and I want to be very clear on that. There's no question about the amazing impact that they have on our community. I will just say that my preference, and I know other council members who've added funding recommendations to the budget have heard me say this before, unless we're responding to a specific, it's the only service provider and they just lost their funding, my personal preference is that we engage in a consistent process so that we're being fair to all of the organizations in our community. Like I said, Dream does incredible work. I think if they had applied during the normal time, no question would have been happy to approve this funding. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't receive funding, but just want to express that because I think when other organizations don't know that this is an opportunity, it's an unfair advantage. And I think especially it is worth noting that some of this is, again, related to the increase in our police department. And I don't want it to be that the nonprofits that have a particular in are perceived as having an advantage. So again, I think that this is an incredible opportunity for these boys. They do great work. Have a great deal of respect for Tracy. See him regularly in the community. But I don't personally prefer this process. And I think in the future, if we have opportunities for funding, whether it's for youth or other social services programs, I would prefer that we had a consistent process so that we could make sure that we were being competitive and that it's the best possible option for a given situation. Again, not speaking specifically to this, love Dream, but I also just think it is important that with the exception of, this is the only organization that does this work and they're going to go under unless we help them out, that we're thinking about being consistent in the way we're allocating funds, especially since this is larger than the majority of the social services grants that we're awarding this fiscal year.
Anybody else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to vote present.
Okay.
Again, love the program, but I just want to make it clear
Okay.
my preference for the process.
That passes. Thank you very much, Braden. Yes, James.
I'd like to move that we hold the old business items in committee for the next committee of the whole.
Okay. I'll second that. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Old business will be moved next to the next COW meeting. Council input and communications. Is there any? And there is no council input and communications. That's wonderful. And with all of our business taken care of, I adjourn. And the Lord is good.